Welcome to AI Unraveled, your daily forensic briefing at the intersection of business and artificial intelligence. It is Wednesday, April 1st, 2026. I'm your co-host, Anna. Today's episode is brought to you by AIRIA and DjamgaMind. In a market where Anthropic is leaking its own source code and Perplexity is being sued for secretly sharing enterprise financial data with Meta, governance is the only moat that matters. AIRIA provides the zero-trust sandboxing required to deploy autonomous agents without exposing your intellectual property. And for the modern decision-maker, DjamgaMind delivers high-fidelity intelligence. We move past the hype to provide strategic audio forensics in healthcare, energy, and finance. Visit DjamgaMind.com to explore our forensics. If you want this daily intelligence completely uninterrupted, subscribe directly on Apple Podcasts to listen to all episodes ads-free. Today, we look at the capital reality check. From OpenAI's record-breaking $122 billion raise to Oracle liquidating its human workforce to buy more GPUs, the entire industry is restructuring for the inference era. Let's look at the bottom line.
At 3 a.m. Pacific time this morning, 30,000 Oracle employees were simultaneously locked out of their corporate systems.
It's entirely shut out.
Yeah. And then 3 hours later, at 6 a.m., they were officially fired by an automated email signed simply, and this is brutal Oracle leadership.
Right. And why? Because the company needed to literally liquidate human payroll just to buy more server cooling fans and, well, graphics cards.
Exactly. So welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're looking at a massive stack of tech, financial, and AI sources from April 1st, 2026. And, I mean, the picture they paint is chilling. The whole romantic idea of the garage startup building a clever algorithm.
It's completely dead.
Yeah, dead and buried.
It has been completely demolished to make way for the gigawatt-consuming data center. I mean, we are witnessing the absolute definition of capital consolidation right now.
100%.
The market is just violently shifting from this fragmented experimental ecosystem of, quirky AI tools into a ruthless winner-takes-all monopoly structure.
So to truly understand what this means for you and your strategic planning, we're sort of changing our approach today. We're putting on our hats as a lead systems architect, that's my background, and a forensic financial strategist.
Right, because we need to perform a real technical and financial autopsy on today's news.
We have to map out the actual mechanics of this consolidation. Who is bleeding out to fund it and who is building the digital monopolies of tomorrow. Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the sheer human cost of what the industry is calling inference CAPEX.
Yeah, inference CAPEX. It's a very clinical term, but the mechanics behind it explain that Oracle bloodbath perfectly. Look, training an AI model, like feeding it the entire internet so it learns how to speak, that is a massive one-time capital expenditure.
Right, the initial training run.
Exactly. But inference. Inference is the perpetual cost of the model actually answering queries or, generating code, analyzing data for millions of users simultaneously. Inference is just an ongoing volume-based burn of electricity and processing power.
And from an engineering standpoint, it requires highly specific architecture. I mean, the sources indicate Oracle is freeing up billions in cash flow specifically for a $50 billion GPU capital expenditure this year alone.
Which is just part of a staggering $156 billion total build-out estimate they have.
Right. And they desperately need NVIDIA H100 and B200 GPUs. And if you're wondering why those specific chips, it's because inference at an enterprise scale requires just unprecedented memory bandwidth.
Yeah, you can't have bottlenecks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you're serving a trillion parameter model to a Fortune 500 company, you cannot have latency. The data has to move from the chip's memory to its processor instantaneously.
And so legacy companies like Oracle, they're doing the clinical math here. Human capital is, well, fluid and replaceable.
Unfortunate, but true.
Right. But high bandwidth GPUs are scarce. They represent the fundamental infrastructure of the next decade. Oracle stock is down nearly 50% since September, yet they are amputating their own workforce to fund this hardware.
Because they have to.
They're realizing that if they don't buy the compute capacity right now, they essentially cease to exist as a platform company.
But wait, let me push back on the financial logic there for a second, because this feels incredibly unstable to me. Are we seriously accepting that legacy tech companies treating human payroll as a piggy bank to fund server farms is like a sustainable business model?
From a pure balance sheet perspective, yes.
But look at the new Quinnipiac University poll from our stack. AI usage is up 14%. I mean, You are probably using it daily for research or data analysis at this point.
Sure.
But public sentiment is cratering. 70% of respondents expect AI to shrink job opportunities, and only 5% believe AI developers have the public's interests in mind. Doesn't that catastrophic collapse in public trust threaten the actual enterprise adoption they're trying to fund?
I mean, the 5% trust figure is an absolute indictment of the industry's PR, certainly.
Yeah.
But from a purely forensic financial standpoint, enterprise adoption is entirely decoupled from public sentiment. Corporations do not buy infrastructure based on public trust.
They buy it for the bottom line.
They buy it for efficiency yields. Exactly. If an AI agent can execute a database migration in 4 seconds that used to take a human team 3 weeks, the enterprise will buy it, regardless of whether the public likes the company that built it.
For decision makers navigating these massive capital reallocations and layoffs, DjamgaMind provides technical-grade, human-verified audio forensics in healthcare and finance. Visit DjamgaMind.com.
You see, the Oracle situation really exposes a critical baseline here. If a legacy giant is bleeding out just to afford the entry ticket for compute,
Then what are the market leaders doing?
precisely, the companies actually building the foundational models must be raising sovereign-level wealth to maintain their lead.
Which brings us directly to the $122 billion elephant in the room.
Oh, OpenAI.
Yeah, OpenAI just announced a funding round that puts their valuation at $852 billion.
Almost $1 trillion.
It is the biggest single fundraise in venture history, anchored by Amazon, NVIDIA, and SoftBank. But, as our sources show, the valuation isn't just a hype bubble anymore.
No, it's not. There's a fundamental shift in their revenue mechanics. They are hitting $2 billion a month in revenue now. And crucially, this is the financial key here, enterprise revenue is now over 40% of that total.
Wow.
And it is on track to match consumer revenue by year-end.
And that enterprise revenue shift is really the only reason a near trillion-dollar valuation is mathematically justifiable, right?
Exactly. They're no longer selling a novel chatbot subscription. They're embedding themselves as the core cognitive infrastructure for, global logistics, financial forecasting, automated coding.
And to lock in that enterprise dominance, they are transitioning from an application provider to a full platform ecosystem. The sources outline a massive strategic pivot. They're combining ChatGPT, the Codex coding tool, and their Atlas web browser into a single Superapp operating system.
Right, the closed loop.
Yeah. And powering this closed loop is their upcoming model, codenamed Spud, which is heavily rumored to just be ChatGPT 6.0. But the technical engine driving Spud is RSI recursive self-improvement.
We really need to unpack the mechanics of recursive self-improvement because it changes the trajectory of software development entirely.
It does.
Historically, human engineers identify bottlenecks in code and write patches to optimize performance. But under RSI, the AI model is given the agency to profile its own neural network during inference.
It identifies its own inefficiencies.
Yes. It identifies inefficiencies in how it processes data, and then it autonomously rewrites its underlying architecture to run faster.
That's wild.
The model is literally writing the code to make itself smarter, creating this compounding feedback loop that just removes the human bottleneck entirely.
Which explains why Amazon allegedly forced an AGI clause into this funding round.
Oh, yeah.
The clause could reset terms if OpenAI crosses the line into artificial general intelligence. But look at the personnel shifts, too. Fidji Simo is now leading what they're literally calling the AGI deployment team.
Very subtle.
Right, but my concern as a systems architect is the architecture of this Superapp OS. If you are coding in Codex, searching in Atlas, and reasoning in ChatGPT, and all of that data is feeding back into their RSI loop, isn't Fidji Simo just building a monopoly trap?
A walled garden.
Yeah, it's a walled garden built out of cognitive architecture.
Well, a walled garden requires unassailable walls. And in this context, the walls are built out of compute. To sustain a massive, recursively improving closed-loop system, you need infrastructure on a scale that breaks traditional venture capital.
You literally can't raise enough money the normal way.
No, you can't. Which is why we need to look at the confidential SEC filing from SpaceX that just leaked today.
Oh, this was crazy.
They're seeking a $1.75 trillion valuation to raise $75 billion in the largest IPO in human history, internally codenamed Project Apex.
Wait, I have to stop you there and look at this structurally. You are telling me Elon Musk is using a space logistics company, literally rockets and satellites, to fund an AI model for XAI.
That's exactly what he's doing.
How does that pass SEC scrutiny? That sounds less like capital consolidation and more like a colossal misappropriation of funds. How is the market tolerating a rocket IPO subsidizing a data center?
Because the market tolerates it when infrastructure becomes fungible at the hyperscale level.
Fungible infrastructure.
Yeah. Musk absorbed his AI lab, xAI, into the broader empire. He is using Starlink's global satellite internet revenue and Starship's massive defense contracts to build a capital reservoir. It's basically a strategic shell game.
Okay. Right.
You sell the public markets on interplanetary logistics, but you route the actual liquidity to secure the server farms necessary to compete with OpenAI's $122 billion war chest.
That makes sense.
The compute required for xAI's deep learning models is just so vast that only the cash flow of a global telecom and aerospace monopoly can actually sustain it.
It is astronomical leverage, literally. And looking at the sources, you see the desperate countermove from the open source community happening right now. PrismML just emerged from stealth today with Bonsai.
Right, the local model.
Oh. Yeah, an open source model designed specifically to run locally on standard consumer hardware. It is a localized rebellion against these massive cloud monopolies.
I mean, the engineering behind Bonsai is admirable. They're utilizing extreme quantization to shrink the model size so it fits on, a laptop's RAM. But in a market defined by hyperscale CAPEX and RSI, running a heavily compressed model on consumer hardware, it simply cannot compete with an $852 billion cloud intelligence.
It's a knife at a gunfight.
Exactly. The massive capital requirements are forcing the major players to ruthlessly trim any fat that eats up expensive compute just to fund their core reasoning engines.
Which perfectly explains the sudden end to the video generation wars. I mean, OpenAI is officially ditching its video generator, Sora.
Is walking away from it.
Yeah, they are tearing up a massive $1 billion licensing partnership with Disney. Fidji Simo reportedly told the staff that they cannot be distracted by side quests.
Well, from a systems perspective, video generation relies on diffusion models,
Right.
And those are astronomically compute-intensive compared to standard text generation, rendering the physics, the lighting, temporal consistency frame by frame.
Yeah.
It just burns through GPU cycles that OpenAI desperately needs for the enterprise logic we discussed earlier.
So it's a pure allocation of resources.
Yes, away from high compute, low-margin creative tools, and toward high-margin enterprise reasoning.
And naturally, nature abhors a vacuum. Google is aggressively swooping into that abandoned video space with VO 3.1 Lite.
Pricing it at, what, 5 cents?
Just 5 cents per second to generate video. And they released a faster VO 3.1 fast model alongside it. They are trying to undercut the market xAI is targeting with its upcoming Grok Imagine model.
Sure, but Google and xAI are optimizing their digital monopolies in the cloud, where the variables are entirely controlled.
Right.
But the core narrative of today's news dump shifts dramatically when this inference CAPEX mindset crashes into the unpredictable physical world.
The friction of reality. Let's look at the absolute chaos in Wuhan, China today. Over 100 Baidu robotaxis suffered a mass system malfunction simultaneously. They completely froze in fast-moving traffic on a major ring road.
A total gridlock.
You had terrified passengers stranded in the middle lane with cars whipping past them on both sides. People were hitting the SOS buttons and literally running across active traffic lanes just to escape.
You have to analyze the failure cascade there. In a digital environment, an AI hallucination is just a bad line of code, right?
Just refresh the page.
Exactly. But in the physical world, edge cases, like unexpected weather patterns, sensor degradation from dirt, unpredictable human drivers swerving those, require instantaneous localized compute resolution.
The car has to think for itself right then and there.
Right. When a robotaxi's onboard sensors encounter conflicting data that it cannot resolve locally, it defaults to a fail-safe state. It stops.
Which is supposed to be safe.
Supposed to be. But when 100 vehicles hit a localized network latency spike and cannot ping the central server to resolve the physical anomaly, the entire fleet freezes. You cannot solve physical latency by just throwing more money at a server farm 500 miles away.
Which really clarifies Google's bizarre hardware announcement today. I mean, instead of pushing complex autonomous robotics, Google is rolling out a screenless fabric Fitbit band.
Just a piece of fabric.
It's literally just a gray fabric band with an orange inner lining, relying on an AI health coach promoted by Stephen Curry. No screens, no moving parts, no autonomous driving risks. Just passive data collection. They are terrified of the liability the physical world presents.
Because commercial robotics are proving too legally messy for the consumer market. A frozen robotaxi is a massive PR disaster and an insurance nightmare.
Absolutely.
The commercial sector is retreating to safe, passive data collection. But there is one arena where physical AI is scaling effortlessly.
The military.
Right, an arena where capital constraints essentially do not exist and the risk tolerance is fundamentally inverted. Defense.
Look at Saronic, a defense tech startup based in Austin, Texas. They just raised $1.75 billion, doubling their valuation to $9.25 billion overnight.
Incredible numbers.
They produce autonomous drone boats. Today, the U.S. Navy awarded them a $392 million contract for 24-foot Corsair vehicles. These autonomous ships can carry heavy payloads for 1,000 nautical miles, operated by a single sailor using their proprietary Echelon software. They are scaling so fast they're planning a massive new manufacturing facility called Port Alpha in South Texas.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the contrast is vital for our strategic autopsy here. Why does Saronic's Echelon software successfully navigate the open ocean while Baidu's system fails on a ring road?
Right. Why?
It's not just about fewer pedestrians in the water. The military operates with massive guaranteed capital, and they demand architectures built for contested environments. Saronic systems are likely designed for extreme edge compute.
Meaning the processing happens on the boat itself?
It's exactly. The drone boat can execute complex navigation and payload delivery entirely disconnected from the cloud, so it's immune to the latency spikes that paralyze Baidu. Furthermore, if a military drone glitches during a naval exercise, it is an expected operational hazard.
Collateral damage is baked in.
The military absorbs that risk. A civilian transit authority cannot.
But the core requirement of military architecture, that absolute control, that isolated environment, that zero-trust security, is exactly what the commercial enterprise sector thought it was buying.
But they weren't.
No. If we look at the liability autopsy in today's stack, the walls of the commercial walled gardens are already crumbling. We are facing a massive crisis of shadow data.
The illusion of the secure commercial AI is shattering. Let's examine the mechanics of the Perplexity lawsuit filed today by a Utah resident under California consumer protection laws.
Right.
The user shared highly sensitive financial and investment data with the Perplexity chatbot, assuming it was a private session.
But the lawsuit alleges that the moment you log in, Perplexity drops trackers on your device. It then engages in shadow data transmission, quietly siphoning that sensitive conversational context and passing it directly to Meta and Google for highly targeted ad profiling. I really need to understand the mechanism here. How does a proprietary chat interface leak data to an external ad network?
It is the dark underbelly of subsidized AI.
Yeah.
Running inference costs billions, as we discussed.
Yeah.
If a user is not paying a premium enterprise tier to cover that CAPEX, the AI company monetizes the user's data. They embed UI tracking pixels, invisible lines of code that monitor your keystrokes and session inputs.
Jesus.
These pixels act as a bridge, packaging the semantic meaning of your financial queries and transmitting them as behavioral tags via ad exchanges. For an enterprise user, discovering that your proprietary financial strategies are being fed into Meta's ad targeting algorithm is a catastrophic breach of operational security.
As Perplexity is sued for leaking financial data and Anthropic accidentally exposes its own source code, the enterprise cannot rely on external trust. AIRIA provides the necessary zero-trust security posture management to ensure your internal agents never leak proprietary data to third parties.
We really must dissect that Anthropic exposure, by the way, because technically it is far more dangerous than the Perplexity data siphoning.
Oh, absolutely.
Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei has been on this public relations tour boasting about their new Claude Mythos model, claiming its reasoning capabilities are so profound they have to warn government officials about unprecedented cybersecurity risks.
Right. And then, on a random Tuesday, a developer makes a basic packaging error while pushing out version 2.1.88 of their software. They accidentally leak over 512,000 lines of Claude source code to the public.
Unbelievable.
And this wasn't even an isolated incident. It was their second leak in a week, having accidentally dumped 3,000 internal files just days prior.
The distinction of what leaked is what terrifies systems architects. They did not leak the model weights, the underlying neural network that actually processes language. They leaked the internal scaffolding.
Which is worse.
So much worse.
That's...
The scaffolding is the architectural rulebook. It contains the explicit API calls, dictating how the AI interacts with external databases, the specific logic chains it uses to verify information, and crucially, the hard-coded limits designed to prevent it from executing malicious commands.
So, to use an analogy, leaking the internal scaffolding instead of the model weights is like having a vault that holds a highly reactive biological agent, right? You didn't leak the biological agent itself, but you just accidentally published the exact sequence of command codes needed to turn off the containment field and open the airlocks.
You lost the control mechanism.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You gave adversarial actors the exact blueprint of your safety systems, allowing them to map out injection attacks that bypass the model's ethical constraints entirely. It is amateur hour at the foundational level of the industry.
Which perfectly explains the sheer panic in the enterprise defense market today. Companies are rushing to bolt on defensive infrastructure to protect their own data from the AI tools they are actively paying for. Teleport just introduced Beams to allow users to run AI agents securely within trusted, isolated runtimes. And Salesforce is desperately pushing updates to its Slackbot agent, adding MCP connections.
MCP, or Model Context Protocol, is essentially a secure, localized bridge. Instead of uploading your entire corporate database into the AI's cloud memory where it might be leaked or used for RSI training, an MTP connection allows the AI to briefly reach into your local database.
Right.
It extracts only the specific context needed to answer a single query, and then it immediately destroys the bridge. It's a desperate attempt to keep data walled off.
But I have to ask you, as our forensic financial strategist, look at this entire landscape. How can enterprise revenue possibly sustain an $852 billion valuation for OpenAI, or a $1.75 trillion IPO for SpaceX to fund XAI, when the fundamental technology is secretly transmitting shadow data to ad networks, freezing 100 cars in physical traffic and leaving its digital containment fields wide open due to packaging errors?
Because it's a bubble driven by the sheer fear of obsolescence.
FOMO on a corporate scale.
Exactly. The enterprise sector feels it has absolutely no choice. The operational efficiency gains promised by a model like Spud operating within a Superapp OS are so staggering that corporations are willing to tolerate immense security vulnerabilities just to ensure they are not left behind by their competitors.
They're trapped.
They're buying the massive cargo plane while the engines are still being bolted on in midair and just praying the security doors get welded shut before their intellectual property gets sucked out of the cabin.
So, synthesizing this massive stack of intelligence, from the 30,000 human jobs liquidated at Oracle to the jaw-dropping capital raises down to the shadow data lawsuits, what is the definitive read on this April 2026 landscape?
The experimental era of artificial intelligence has officially ended, and the industrial deployment phase has begun.
Yeah.
This is no longer a meritocracy of code where the smartest algorithm wins. It is a clinical, ruthless game of capital consolidation and inference CAPEX. The ultimate victors will not necessarily be the most innovative engineers. They will be the wealthiest holding companies.
The ones with the deepest pockets.
They will be the entities that can afford the $100 billion gigawatt data centers, even if it requires gutting their human workforce or leveraging sovereign-level space infrastructure just to subsidize the compute. The ecosystem has consolidated into a survival of the most capitalized.
The gigawatt data center has won, and it leaves you with a deeply unsettling final thought to mull over as you watch these monoliths race toward artificial general intelligence. If models like Spud truly achieve recursive self-improvement, autonomously rewriting their architecture to become exponentially smarter with every cycle, their capacity to consume electricity and processing power will scale vertically. Will their hunger for compute eventually outstrip even the GDP and energy grids of the sovereign nations trying to regulate them? Subscribe to AI Unraveled on Apple Podcasts to always listen completely, ads-free.
That concludes our forensic business rundown for April 1st. The strategic signal for today is capital consolidation. The era of thousands of AI startups playing in the sandbox is over. When OpenAI raises $122 billion in a single day, and SpaceX files for a $1.75 trillion IPO just to keep the servers running, the barrier to entry has officially become insurmountable for the middle class of tech. If you are an enterprise leader, your strategy can no longer rely on stringing together a dozen different AI tools. You are either buying into the Superapp monopoly, or you are building your own sovereign infrastructure. This episode was made possible by AIRIA and DjamgaMind. For human-verified technical-grade forensics, visit DjamgaMind.com. And if you are ready to stay ahead of the consolidation without the noise, hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts to enjoy this briefing completely ads-free. I'm Anna. Stay sharp and keep unraveling the future.
And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads, We build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.